Anyone who's been hanging around this stream for any amount of time for the past year or so know that I have been kind of captured in the grips of a pirate obsession. It's waned in recent months, but it's been going strong for quite some time, and it all started when a YouTube regular of mine, about a year and a half or so ago, he kept suggesting to me to play Sid Meier's Pirates. I'd never played that game before, so he kept saying, "Play Sid Meier's Pirates, say Sid Meier's Pirates," and I was like, "All right, you know what? I'm gonna play it." One of those days, I finally caved and said, "I'm gonna play Pirates," and I did. Turns out, no surprise to me, it's a wildly acclaimed game from many years ago. Turns out it's a fun game. It's hella fun, and it actually got me really, really, really in to pirate lore, particularly the pirate, the Caribbean era, the golden age of piracy. And I got real deep into it around the same time that my work, my place of employment, sent us on a work junket to the Caribbean. So I was in that area. I was trying to find all the pirate lore that I could. I was playing Sid Meier's Pirates when I was back at home. I started watching The Last Pirate Kingdom, which is a great docudrama that Netflix dropped right around that same time. I mean, everything was feeding pirates to me. I was feasting. I was feasting on pirate lore. It even got me to re-examine my position on One Piece. I had tried to watch One Piece several times years past. I know One Piece is, very lightly pirate related when you actually consider the fantasy elements of that show versus what pirates actually were in real life. But it's pirate enough for me to give it another shot. And I did, and I ended up getting super into that too. So I'm all in. I'm all about One Piece. The One Piece is real. I'm all about Sid Meier's Pirates. I'm all about any kind of pirate game. I started trying to play Sea of Thieves on this stream as well. And even though I like the mechanic of that game, I was disincentivized to continue because it was, at the time at least, strictly PvE. And as soon as I was trying to get my mind around player controls, some other random ass player showed up and blew me out of the water. And that's the kind of shit that just kind of disincentivized me. I'm not a PvP player. I'm not. I'm a single player kind of person. Most of the games I play are single player games. And that's not to say that I won't play a multiplayer game. I've played Halo Infinite quite a bit on this stream, and I think I can't remember which other ones I've played multiplayer, but I know I played that one a lot. I'm not opposed to it, but when I want to have a pirate adventure, though, I don't want to worry about other players fucking up my immersion. I don't want to worry about, can I explore that island in peace and not have to worry about some griefer who's several dozen levels above me coming around and blasting me out of the water. Not something I want to worry about. So I didn't last very long in Sea of Thieves. I do want to get back to it at some point with the crew and give it a real proper go. But up until that point, my pirate fix was satiated largely by dipping in and out of Sid Meier's Pirates periodically, and playing a few indie games that Steam had to offer, such as Captain Bones, which is a pretty rudimentary game, but it actually is a lot of fun. It has some pretty good mechanics and a pretty good overall a pretty good overall vision of how it wants to present itself as an open world single player pirate adventure, which is the only thing I ever really wanted. Well, recently, Ubisoft put their own pirate offering, Skull and Bones, on open beta prior to its release, which I believe is scheduled for the 22nd. Let me check on that. Why did I do this? I have such weird, I don't know if it's anxiety or ADHD or what, but I have such weird habits around whenever I start talking about something. I can't just sit here and talk. I have to do something with my hands. I'm always fidgeting. I'm fidgeting around with shit while I'm talking. And as I was talking about, my getting into pirate lore and all of that stuff, I'm fidgeting with my hands, sure. And I'm not really realizing what I'm doing until I go to type. And as I'm typing to try to see Skull and Bones release date, I realize what I've been doing while I've been fidgeting with my hands. And what I've been doing is taping my fucking fingers up. Why? Why did I do this? This is so weird. Why did I tape my fingers together while I was talking about pirates? I didn't realize it until I tried typing Skull and Bones, and I was like, wait, why can't I move my fingers? Oh my god, okay, I need medication of some sort. This is starting to get a little weird. February 13th. Oh, so it's already out. So Skull and Bones is already out at this point. It wasn't out prior. I was playing the public beta, but it's released. And prior to its release, I did jump into the open beta to try it out. You know, I didn't have... Ubisoft games have been getting trashed a lot lately, and I haven't been getting in on that party because I just don't play Ubisoft games all that often. I think I own 2, and both of them are Assassin's Creed games, and I haven't played one of them. I think I have Assassin's Creed Origin and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I bought them both at the tail end of my Witcher 3 obsession. I was telling myself, okay, I can't play Witcher 3 anymore. I've got to get off of Witcher 3, but I want to play something like it. So I was told that those 2 games were the closest. Odyssey probably is, but I still couldn't really get into Odyssey all that much. I had heard about Black Flag, and it seemed intriguing, but I wasn't into pirates at the time that game came out, so I just kind of dismissed it. I was just like, whatever. But after my obsession, I revisited it a little bit. I haven't played it yet, but once I started looking into it, that was when I became aware of Skull and Bones. And Skull and Bones, a property from Ubisoft, was actually inspired by, or I guess you should say, kind of an offshoot of Assassin's Creed Skull and Bones. People wanted there to be like a full open world pirate game of similar vein to Assassin's Creed. Or, the Assassin's Creed Black Flag version. So that's kind of what spawned the development of this game. It's been in development since 2018, so it's had some years. It's had some years of work done on it. And the grand unveiling, they're putting it out on the showroom floor. In development since 2018. It's 2024 now. What do they have to show for it? There's been some, prior to this open beta, there's been some hiccups here and there relating to expectations, what people want out of this game. Particularly after the rise of Sea of Thieves, games like Sea of Thieves. And so, I think the expectations are pretty high, especially for a game that does posit itself as a PvPvE type game. Again, not the kind of game I want, but I want to get into this game. I wanted to get into it. I wanted to see what it was all about. So I jumped into the open beta and gave it a shot. I gotta tell you, I was really disappointed with what I you know what? Before I get into my disappointment, let me just kind of walk you through my perception of the game, and then I'll get into my thoughts on it. Starting off, you are on a galleon of some sort. So already, it's kind of like an In Medias Res thing, You're already part of a pirate crew that is pretty massive. It's a big ship. You got a lot of crewmen. You got a shit ton of cannons, and the British fleet is after you. And there's a lot of those ships, and you just jump right in. You learn how to do combat right off the bat. Doesn't really hold your hand all that much right there, at least, which I appreciate. And it does seem pretty epic because ships are all around you. You're pressing the I forget which button. It's like R2 or R, it's like the right trigger or the left trigger or whatever to go into cannon mode, and then you just hit A or something to fire the cannon. It's pretty easy. It's not, I was kind of worried about, whenever I see ship combat games, I'm always a little concerned about how complex the nature of seafarer combat is going to go. It's pretty intuitive in this game, in that regard at least, just firing the cannons. So I have other issues, but for at least aiming and firing your cannons, it was pretty fluid and pretty fast. And the visuals were pretty decent. I like, all the explosions and the waves and all that sort of shit. It was a pretty epic beginning, even if I didn't know what the hell was going on. But once you get past that part where your ship is inevitably overrun, there's just too many British ships around, and they blast your ship into nothingness. And then you wake up on a small island with a couple of other fellow crewmen who decide to call you captain. You're the captain now, and you're just like on a little dinghy or whatever. And you've gotta figure out. Well, I mean, that's the first part of this issue for me, was figuring out what to do at that point. Navigation isn't super intuitive. It could be better, but also I'm just kind of a dummy, so it took me a little while to figure out where to go. I didn't like the part of having to use a spear to kill sharks. That seemed weird, but I guess that was just kind of getting you. Here's the thing. I thought that was going to develop into a bigger portion of exploration later on. And this comes across, this introduces my first problem with this game, is that there is no real exploration mode in this game. When I docked on the first island and all the other pirates are drunk and having fun and whatnot, I was under the impression, okay, so there is going to be like more of an open world exploration on foot kind of mechanic to it. And maybe there's some hand-to-hand combat that I'll have to learn in order to, win a duel or whatever. And that isn't really the case. It seems like the islands are just kind of lobbies for other players to gather and maybe communicate with one another, form up a squad, and then go back out into the seas. And it seems like that's the only purpose they serve, which is kind of a bummer. Again, for me, as someone who's looking for, something a little bit more exploration based and not something that's like, Call of Duty lobby or something. This kind of teases the pirate adventure without actually giving me the pirate adventure. But I was under the impression, okay, you know what? This is just the tutorial. It's the opening. Once I get out into the real game world, the game will open up. It'll be much more robust. And so, I've ventured on, and I did the quest to recover treasure and all of that sort of stuff. And when I went onto the ship, the main pirate ship, to recover a journal, you have to use a crowbar to break the door open. And when you get there, in my mind, I was like, okay, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna pull up, and I'm gonna pull up to the door. I'm gonna disembark off the little skiff. I'm gonna walk up to the door, and then I'll be able to like just whack at it to open it with the crowbar, and then walk in and get the thing. That's not how it works. You roll up on your skiff, and then a UI pops up with like a little mini game. Hey, look, I'm fiddling with stuff again, but this time it's a little stress weenie. So this isn't as destructive as the tape around my fingers. So I'm fidgeting with my little stress weenie here. That's gonna be taken out of context. But at least I'm showing you what it is rather than keeping it out of sight while saying something like that. But anyways. The UI pops up, and there's like this little thing, and you have to hit the button when it's at the right moment, where there's like a little green sliver, and when it's in that green sliver, you have to hit the button to like nail it. And it's like, why am I doing this? Like, this feels like this feels like it would be a mini game. It's like a fishing mini game in a smaller game, for something that's like as big and robust and as epic as Skull and Bones is trying to present itself to be. I would assume that I would just be able to beat the shit out of the door and go in. Like, why am I playing this little weird mini game? Or at the very least, I would disembark, interact with the door, and then like a mini game that's a little more than just like an iPhone timer type game. A little bit more of a thoughtful mini game, kind of like the lockpicking in Starfield, which is fun. Like, I actually like a lot of lockpicking components in games I don't really care too much for, but Bethesda has created at least two that I've enjoyed: the lockpicking mechanic in Skyrim and the lockpicking mechanic in Starfield. And you could tell that they put thought into both of those things. This doesn't feel like they put any thought into it at all. This felt like, oh shit, we forgot to create a component that allows players to like do things, to interact with the game world. What are we gonna do? Just toss in that little iPhone mini game that we downloaded the source code from someone's example, Unity example on GitHub. Like, oh, you want to know how to make quick little mini games in Unity on iOS? Here's some sample code that I have. Knock yourself out, 12-year-olds. It's like, oh, we'll just take that code and use that to create a door unlocking mechanic. And then they reuse it later on, too, to cut down trees. It makes no sense. So once you get past that point, you go into the main city. You have to gather materials to build a ship, and you do all that. Once you get your well, actually, this is the issue. Part of the materials that you need to gather to build your ship are a specific type of tree. And when I got this quest, I was like, okay, I got to go find this tree. I got onto my ship. I saw on the map where the tree was. I sailed right out to it. I looked at the tree, and I was like, okay, now what? Okay, maybe there's some place I could dock. Let me see if I could find maybe some dock or a shallow part of a beach that I could anchor nearby, and then swim over to the island, and then I'll be able to explore the island on foot. And then I'll walk up to the tree, do some tree punching like it's a survival game, and then I'll gather those materials and go back to the ship. And no, it's none of that. 'Cause all of that sounds great. It's none of that. You sail up to the tree that's right up on the shoreline, and then the mini game pops up. It's the same one as the crowbar mini game. It's the little ticker, and you gotta hit it right when it's in the green spot. And it's like, why? Why does this exist? This doesn't add anything to it. It adds nothing to the game. It just highlights laziness on my part. It feels like it's lazy. It feels like a lazy component. And it feels like it's just a time-wasting component. Like, why are you making me do this? Like, it would have made maybe it wouldn't have made more sense, but it would have been more acceptable if the wood that I need to gather was just lying on the ground and I just hit the button to collect it, like you do the other materials that's floating in the water. Like, why are you making me go out of my way to break whatever immersion I may have had in this pirate world to play a mini game that's hardly even that? It's not much of a mini game at all. So, like, that's one issue that I had with the game. It just doesn't feel epic at all. It wants to be epic. I love the environment too. So this pirate-based game isn't set in the Caribbean. It's actually set in the Indian Ocean. Which is cool because you don't really hear a lot about piracy in that part of the world during this period of time. The game revolves around piracy and naval warfare with a fantastical setting in East Africa and Southeast Asia during the late 17th century, the peak of the historical golden age of piracy. So whenever you hear about the golden age of piracy, you're always thinking about the Caribbean, right? And rightfully so. There's a lot of legendary pirates in Western lore that came from that era, but piracy was a worldwide thing. It popped off in Asia, it popped off in Southeast Asia, East Africa, all over the place. So it's cool to actually have a pirate story that focuses on that part of the world, especially with a lot of the visual aesthetics, with the design that you can tell is very influenced from, Indian culture and whatnot. I like that. It looks cool. And it seems cool. I want to hear more about that. I would like to learn more about that. But the world doesn't really give you a lot to explore, because once you actually gather that wood, you build your ship, and they're like, all right, you're off on your own. Go explore into the deep ocean. You don't really do anything other than you sail out, you target a ship. There's a ship that's like, oh, you have to destroy this ship and gather this material for me. You find the ship, you lock onto it, you blast it, and then you board it. You have to board it. Well, you don't have to board it, but you can board it. And when you board it, you get more stuff out of it. But the boarding mechanic is interesting, but once you do actually board, it's really, really disappointing, because what happens is you target, once you damage a ship enough, you target it the same way you would target if you were going to shoot a cannon at it. But instead of shooting a cannon at it, you have to fire grappling hooks over. And you have to hit the target. You can't. It's not automatic. So once you fire your grappling hook and you hit it, then connection is established. Boarding process begins. What does that look like? Well, in my mind, I was ready for a fucking adventure. I was ready for a brawl. I was like, all right, we're gonna board this ship. We're gonna get on board. Draw swords. We're gonna be in a pitched, heated battle. Blood's flying and splattering. People are screaming and yelling. We're kicking people overboard. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a great swashbuckling adventure. But what happens? Well, I could describe it, or I can just show you it. I could just show you what happens, as is illustrated in this gentleman's tweet here. So this is what happens. You find the ship. You fire your grappling hooks to board it. It's connected. Boarding complete. And then you get a UI. And then that's it. And then the ship sinks. That's what happens when you board a ship in this game. And you're done. And my response to that, he's like, he goes, here is the intense climactic boarding combat of Skull and Bones. And I said, even Captain Bones lets you board a ship in real time and fight motherfuckers. Hell, even 20-year-old Sid Meier's Pirate at least gave you a dual mini-game when you boarded a ship. So much of Skull and Bones is just lazy feeling. I'm sure the devs worked hard, but it doesn't play that way. And that's my biggest problem with this game, is that there's so many features, whether it's gathering materials, chopping down trees or whatever, or docking and doing ship-to-ship combat. It feels way more rushed than it should for a game that has been around for a game that's been in development for, I guess, 6 years at this point. Which is pretty crazy. Like, this basically sums up the bulk of gameplay, or at least what I've experienced. Like, there is no getting onto an island and searching for treasure like Sea of Thieves, where you have a map and you got to run around on an island and find where the X is, and then you use your shovel to dig a chest out, and then you grab the chest and you run back to your ship and you get on your ship and sail to the island, deliver the treasure to whoever asked for it or whatever. There's none of that. Like, it's all, you get on your ship, you blast motherfuckers, and then you get off your ship back at the dock, and then you fumble around at some menus to upgrade your ship. Or wash, rinse, and repeat. Like, there's very little adventure to it. As a matter of fact, when you first get your ship, and I mentioned Captain Bones because this is one of those games that I started playing when I was deep into my pirate obsession, and I was just scouring Steam for any kind of pirate game that I could find and play, and this was one of them. In this game, when you start off, when you get your ship, one of the first quests, of course, is to build a ship. Once you actually have your ship, you have to assemble a crew. Part of how you do that is you get onto the open sea, you find other ships with pirate crews on them, you fight them, you board them, and once you beat them to a certain level of health, you can recruit them onto your own crew. So, that's what I did in this game. I jumped out onto my ship, I sailed out, I found some other pirate ships out there, blasted them with my cannons, I boarded them. We had a sword duel on their ship, and once they were adequately harmed, I recruited them, and then they were on my ship. And then I had a couple of dudes manning my cannons on my ship. And, you could do that in this game. And, this game is still in early development. I was only able to recruit 2 guys, but you can build bigger ships and recruit larger amounts of people. And that's cool. That sounds like how you would build a pirate crew. In Skull and Bones, though, like, once you make it to that first big hub city, and you build your ship, you just automatically have a giant-ass crew. Like, you jump onto your ship, and all of a sudden, there's like 30 guys on there. And it's like, where'd all these motherfuckers come from? I didn't recruit these guys. Like, why all of a sudden do I have a crew of 30? I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody that just showed up to this dock on a dinghy. Like, all of a sudden, oh, this game has wall running? That's crazy. Like, all of a sudden, I'm manning a giant fleet? Like, why is this a thing? It's so lazy. It doesn't give you the opportunity to actually, like, be a pirate, like, do pirate shit. It feels like a demo. It feels like Skull and Bones feels like a mini game distraction from a larger game. Somewhere out there's a bigger open world game that's set in the 17th century. Maybe it's a colonial game of some sort that allows you to be like a spice trader or a merchant, or it allows you to, work in service of the British government or whatever. And somewhere in that bigger game, there's a mini game that allows you to play Skull and Bones, where, I'm going to be a pirate, and we're gonna blast merchant ships out the water, and we're gonna board them and steal their stuff. And then once we get their loot after boarding them in that shitty sequence you just saw, Then we'll sell that. We could sell it, or we could trade it to a merchant, or we could become merchants ourselves, and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. Like, it feels like it's a smaller part of a bigger thing, but as its own thing independently, it's really really underwhelming. Yeah, this guy said, for comparison, 11 years earlier. So this is Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Which also just looks visually a lot better than Skull and Bones. I don't know why Skull and Bones doesn't look at least as good as this. And I'm saying this recognizing that I'm watching a really shitty Twitter quality video. Hey, look, you could actually board a pirate ship. You're walking around, you're interacting with your ship, you jumped up onto your fucking crow's nest, you grab a rope, you swing over. Oh, look at this good swashbuckling action. Now you're on the enemy ship. Like, this was 11 years ago. Like, why is Skull and Bones such a dramatic regression from what we had 11 years ago? Oh, yeah. Ubisoft has the audacity to claim that Skull and Bones is a AAA game, which, you know, is their justification for charging way more above normal for purchase. When Sea of Thieves, I mean, not Sea of Thieves, but when you board a ship on Sid Meier's Pirates from 2004, at least it lets you play like a dueling mini game. Like, you and your dude and the captain of the ship that you're boarding, you have to do like a little mini game where you sword fight one another. So it's not just like you automatically boarded the ship. Although there is a component in the game where you can just auto board like weaker ships. If you very clearly outman them, then you'll automatically take them over. But if it's a ship of equal or greater strength to yours, then you've got to do some work to take it. And you actually board their ship and can, you know, sword fight a motherfucker. It too plays out as a mini game, but at least it's a fun mini game that keeps you immersed in the pirate world. It's not, you know, it's not these menus. A menu is not a good substitution for like immersive gameplay. Again, I don't have a problem with the cannon shooting mechanic in Skull and Bone. What it is just that everything else outside of that is so lame. It's just so weak. It's not epic. It's not sprawling. It's not intuitive. It's not fun. It's a demo. Apparently, the resource collection is some stop the arrow in the center to win mini game like a meat and fuck game. I don't even know what that is. What is a meat and fuck game? But yeah, this is like what the chopping down trees looks like. You're still on your ship. You don't board. I wanted to board this. I wanted to dock and like board this island and run around and find the trees and chop it down and shit and maybe get into a fight with someone. But no, it just shows this little thing and you got to click the mouse wheel when it's right in this little area right here. It's super lame. It's an incredibly lame game. And that's the problem. It's just so weak. It doesn't offer anything of what I was expecting from a AAA sprawling pirate adventure that's been in development for 6 years or so. And also, like, the PvE mechanic, again, like, if that's your thing, then fine. You'll at least like that aspect of it, or at the very least, it's not gonna bother you as much as it bothers me. But when I'm playing one of these games, I don't want to be in the open sea and then see fucking, you know, a boob fondler 6969 above a ship that's like sailing past me, right? Like, to me, that's incredibly lame. I don't like seeing gamer tags just, you know, bombard their way in my play session, even if I'm not interacting with that person. It's just annoying to me. Oh, talking about combat controls, my biggest pet peeve is the inconsistency with which you navigate menus in sea combat. So, in order to target a ship with your cannons, you have to press and hold, I believe, one of the trigger buttons. And that puts you into aiming mode. And then you press your button to either, you know, shoot the cannons or shoot the grappling hooks to board or whatever. Sure, that's fine. That's great. But when you get damaged, you're going to have to repair your ship. And there's a whole other radial menu that you bring up to repair your ship. In order to bring up the radio menu, you have to press, I believe it's the left button, left shoulder button. But unlike virtually every other radial menu in any other game that you would play, you don't press and hold to keep the radial menu up. You tap it. It's a toggle. So even though you're pressing and holding the trigger to aim, you tap the shoulder button to bring up the radial menu so you can heal and stuff. Now that's already annoying because it's inconsistent behavior. You're already being trained to press and hold to do other things in the heat of combat. But what's worse about it is the button register, the button press doesn't register if you hold too long. So like you have to press and release immediately. You can't press it and then hold it and then release it. Like if you forget, like if because that happened a lot where I would be holding the controller and I would be doing this with the trigger to like aim the cannon and shoot, pressing A to shoot, and then I'm like, oh shit, I'm almost dead. I gotta repair my ship. I would hit the button to bring up the radial menu, holding it, thinking I gotta press and hold. Then I would forget, oh yeah, it's a toggle, and I would release. Now on that release, I would at the very least hope that the menu would pop up then because I did press the button. I did at the very least press the button, even if I held it for a while. But no, it doesn't bring the menu up at all. If you hold it too long, it won't. You have to do that to bring the menu up, even though you're pressing and holding in other instances. And what's really annoying about that is when you're in a desperate panic to heal. Like, you could fuck around and not have your menu pop up even though you're pressing the button. What I would expect to happen is the menu pops up on button down. Whether button comes up or not should be irrelevant in my view. On button down, that menu pops up. And then you can release it and nothing happens. And then button down, the menu goes away. Like, it should have nothing to do with a button up state. Like, just button down, menu pops up. Even if it's still operating on a toggle. But because it doesn't work like that, it only works on button up, and only in certain instances of button up. Like, you can't hold it too far. Button up isn't registered. You could miss your window of healing if you're not super on top of it. And then it just adds like this whole boxcar racing kind of component to fumbling around with your controls, because you gotta press and hold to do this, and then you gotta toggle to do that. And then when I'm pressing and holding and I'm trying to hit the button to board, every now and then, like there were a number of times when I would just fuck up with what I'm pressing and holding and what I'm toggling and what I'm trying to shoot the grappling hook versus shooting a cannon. And because it's a different button. It's a different button to shoot the grappling hook, obviously. Whatever the button is, it's just another complication to throw into, like, whether you're firing cannons, firing the grappling hook, trying to bring up the radial, then once the radial is brought up, you have to move over. It's just the menu navigation is already an issue before the button press complication comes into effect. So having that inconsistency just adds to the frustration of it all. At the end of the day, is this game worth it? Does the combat make it fun, at least? I don't really know, because it seems like the cool part about a game like Sea of Thieves is that you can build your own pirate crew with other players. Like, someone's a captain, someone mans the ship, someone's on the helm, etc., etc. It's cool. That's a really cool feature. But in this game, it feels more like it has very little to do with building a pirate crew and operating a ship. Every player has their own ship, and their crew they have no attachment to. They're just nameless, faceless NPCs, literally nameless and literally faceless NPCs that auto-populate on your ship, and you don't ever get any sits. Like, there's no, even in like something like Sid Meier's Pirates, you at least have some kind of crew management where you have X amount of people on your crew, and then some of them die, and then once too many people on your crew die, you don't have the ability to reload cannons as quickly, or you can't use all your cannons, or you have some limitations, even though your crew gets happier the smaller it gets because the cut of the loot is bigger. So then when you go out, you start building up your crew again, the crew gets unhappy because there are too many people. That means their cut of the loot is smaller. and then they might mutiny you, and there's all this other sort of stuff that allows you to um, actually manage your pirate ship as a captain. Being a captain of a ship is pretty involved. It's about more than just sailing around and saying you're a captain. You've got to manage your crew, and both Sid Meier's Pirates and Sea of Thieves do a better job of putting you in that role in drastically different ways. And Sid Meier's Pirates, it's like an old school PC simulation game. But Sea of Thieves, it's just by virtue of the fact that, you're playing with actual people who actually have to do roles on a ship. So you just naturally have to have that kind of interaction with them. You don't have that in this game. What it is it's just Call of Duty on boats. You're your own character, another player is their own character, another player is their own character. They all have their own NPCs on their ships, and you're just flying around shooting cannons at each other. Like, is that fun? Doesn't sound like it to me. I don't give a shit about playing games like that. I mean, and again, I say that while also recognizing that, in this game, blasting ships with cannons can be pretty fun. Doing a siege on a town, I think I tried that once. I tried to do a siege on a port town. That was pretty interesting. Could have been fun if I hadn't gotten blasted out of the water at the very end. Ultimately, this game falls short pretty dramatically. Not being able to explore islands on foot, not being able to, gather resources in a way that doesn't make it feel like a cheap iPhone game. Not being able to assemble and build your own pirate crew, but having like a group of NPCs just automatically assigned to you. The controls are kind of weird and can fuck you up if you're not, super on top of being a boxcar racer with all your fingers, which I'm not. The boarding mechanic is lame. Again, that just also feeds into the lack of being able to do anything on your feet rather than on a ship, which doesn't make sense to me because you can go into the lobby areas and run around and decorate your guy, dress him up in different clothes, but it's like, what's the point of making my guy look fucking sick as fuck and all these dope Indian and Western Asian inspired get-ups if, all I'm doing is sitting on my ship with a bunch of NPCs from like 300 yards back. All of the loot gather. I mean, all of the quests are just fetch quests at this point. Maybe once you get deeper into the game, there are more cinematic story components to it that makes it a little bit more interesting. But so far, it's all just, oh, I need some wood. Oh, I need some metal plates. Oh, I need some trees. Oh, I need this. I need that. And then you just sail out somewhere, and you either play a shitty little mini game to get it, or you just shoot some ships to get it. Like, it's not interesting in the slightest. Yeah, and that's the real bummer about it, is because I still haven't gotten my pirate fix. And I know that I'm not really going to get it unless I build a crew in Sea of Thieves and get ready to engage in some annoying PvP, which isn't my thing. I want a open world narrative. I want The Witcher on the seas, basically, is what I'm looking for. I am looking for The Witcher on the high seas. And until I get that, I guess the closest I'm going to get is Captain Bones, which at least gives me the ability to properly board a ship. Everything that Skull and Bones says you can do, you could do a lot better in Captain Bones. And Captain Bones is like, I think this team is like 3 or 4 people. But, I mean, it's still crazy that, a game developed by a very small handful of people built a more robust pirate simulator than, and I guess the thing is, and maybe that's where the point of contention is that perhaps Skull and Bones was never intended to be a pirate simulator. It's just a meathead PvP game that has a very thin pirate veneer on top of it. And if that's the case, then yeah, you're gonna be as disappointed as I am if you play it. But if you just want a PvP experience where you're shooting cannons at motherfuckers, then maybe Skull and Bones is everything you want and need in a game. But from what I was looking for a really epic pirate experience, it falls short in virtually every category outside of aiming a cannon. So, what a bummer. I really wanted more from this game. I was really anticipating something something a little bit more epic, a little bit more grandeur. And instead, what we end up getting is something less than Captain Bones, which I keep mentioning Captain Bones. I don't want to make it sound like I'm shitting on Captain Bones, like, oh man, this game is even worse than a shitty game. No, Captain Bones is a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it, and I can't wait until the full version comes out because I will definitely be diving into that. It has its own issues for sure, but you kind of expect that from a game that's developed on a shoestring budget by 3 or 4 people. You don't expect that from an Ubisoft title that they're positing out as a quadruple A game that's been in development for 6 years. Like, this is barely a double A game, honestly. It feels like a mini game from a more epic game. And that's really the big bummer about it, is it should be better than this. With the amount of time and resources poured into it, it should be a lot better than just like this menu crawling game. So, yeah, that's my take on Skull and Bones. I will not be going back to this one. Not unless somebody like twists my arm to do it.